you see. And so then I'd have been in a position to say, well, that's all right, ma'am, you're being raped. Just as soon as this man gets through refereeing this football game, we'll send you a man down there, you know. I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but I couldn't afford to divert any more of my resources into game playing, you know, because we had a job to do as it was, you know.
Have you heard that, it was on that face-to-face show we saw where they had Chief Price and Lawson and Sheriff Nixon and somebody else, where the suggestion was, or Lawson I think made the suggestion about domestic relations squad, a squad that would...
Well, you need a domestic relations squad, but not policemen. You need social workers. You need counselors.
But it's supposed to get a call. I'm trying to see how it works. Supposed to get a call and
that was Happy Jones' suggestion, I believe.
Was it
all right. And so you've got, and this is what I was trying to say a minute ago. You've got domestic counselors set up that will respond to that call.
You mean if some husband's about to stab his wife?
Well, now, if you get into the stabbing part, then obviously you've got a law violation, then the police are going to move in.
Or if they're throwing bottles at each other.
Then you may have to move the police in. But the majority of these have not gotten to the stabbing, bottle throwing stage, you see.
But don't, in fact, don't the police answer an awful lot of calls where police aren't really...
They're not even related. They're not police-related calls at all. They have nothing to do with law enforcement. This is one of the problem areas that we have to get out of. The police have to get out of.
That's what I mean. Police do respond to a lot of calls which aren't really police calls.
That's right, because this is the way, this is the tradition, you know, that
suppose you teamed
the police are the only people in a city that are up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and so they've just continued to give them extra assignments until I'm sure that equally half of the resources of a police agency are spent in matters that are non-police related at all.
But now, what about, say, the emergency thing, you know, help, my little girl is choking. You know,
well, of course, they should have rescue units manned by firemen to handle these things. And of course, if a policeman happens to be close, certainly it would help anybody in distress. You know, I think this. You can't fault this.
My baby's coming, come and get me to the hospital.
Well, of
you know,
course, you've got the fire department.
Throwing all that on the fire department.
All the policemen who have delivered babies.
Well, no, I'm still trying to think on that domestic relations thing.
The sophistication for the police, you see, the same police officer is the same guy that goes down there and gets us in all of this trouble with this bad judgment that he uses, see, because of his lack of sophistication. So when you sophisticate this guy, you can't expect him to do these menial tasks. You know, you've got to separate these things.
Suppose what's a piece
You can't justify paying him what you're going to have to pay him when he's sophisticated.
Yeah.
That's the point. So you can get other people a lot cheaper to do this, you know.
Oh, on this domestic relations thing, what's the possibility, for instance, of teaming up a social worker and a policeman? I mean, if I were a social worker and two people were throwing bottles at each other, I wouldn't be too happy to go in and try to settle their domestic problem, you know.
I think you got the same problem that you have when a doctor goes into a home and he finds trouble, he calls the police, you know. And when a minister goes in and he finds trouble, he calls the police. And I think you're going to have to approach this from the same point of view. There's no point in teaming up a social worker and a policeman because you're wasting both of them's time. The social worker is not a policeman, and the policeman is not a social worker. And so you just, there's no point. To me, it's pointless to try to arrange this. But we've got to completely reorientate the public to this this whole situation, or else we just go on like we are. And let the policeman be the psychologist and sociologist and the family counselor and everything else, you know, that he has to contend with. And the policeman, in fact, is restricted to a law violation. He can't take any action unless the law's been violated.
Before tape starts going bad again, if it does, I want to just bring you back to that period of April 1968 and the period immediately after the assassination, and your feelings, not just about Martin Luther King, but how were your feelings about the city? Did you, I don't even want to suggest words, you know, how, this was your hometown, and there was a lot of attention being paid to it.
Well, my feelings were and continued to be until the chamber moved recently, that we were in for a lot of trouble and we were going to have all sorts of problems. because I didn't think that the real force that could bring change was committed. So I worried a great deal about it, because I knew that these problems were there, and I knew that they were going to come out in one form. I didn't know what the vehicles were going to be. Just like the sanitation strike, it provided a vehicle. And we're off and running, and there was certainly going to be other vehicles that was going to come along.
And you felt that in April 1968, you felt these problems were still with
Certainly.
the
They hadn't been
city.
solved at all. They just solved a few little dollars to the sanitation strikers and a recognition of the union. And this is what the union wanted, after all, you know. Let's don't get confused, you know, and think the union is out to settle all of the black people's problems. They're in business too. And the minute that they got their problems solved, they're going to the next one, you know. But they leave behind all of these problems that really was more of the motivating force, you know, that really brought the real problem.